Charlie, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. Thank you.
In a recent article that you had in The Atlantic, you said that addressing artificial intelligence could be the most ambitious and enduring project of Pope Leo XIV's legacy. Why are you making that claim so early on in his pontificate?
Well, for two reasons, I think. Number one, he's just been totally explicit about this being a focus for him. Even before he talked about it himself, there were cardinals that said, hey, I had lunch with him. This is like what he's focused on, right? And then the second part of it, I think, is, if we're going to talk about ambition, AI is, to say that it's going to impact nearly every part of our culture, it's become a cliche at this point. Like, that's what almost everyone says, and they are right. Can the church respond to that? That's ambitious, right? The church has struggles speaking into many things in the public domain. If we can get this one right, it would be super important, but it's also very ambitious.
What has the church said on AI so far, if anything?
Yeah, so there's been a number of working groups that have been put together on AI. In fact, you could argue that the church has been ahead of the broader culture on AI because these groups have been around for some years now. There's even been a book produced, Antiqua et Nova, that is worth reading. It's available free online, created by one of these groups. Also, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith cited Antiqua et Nova in their doctrinal note on these questions. And so, but we really need a comprehensive encyclical, I think. And I suspect, but don't know for sure, that our current Holy Father is, at least in the early stages of putting something like that together.
Well, I want to dive into what is the landscape of AI right now. And what may be the most talked about AI breakthrough recently is ChatGPT, the most popular chatbot by far, which is a computer program that simulates conversation with a human. Charlie, as a Catholic theologian, are you concerned with the concept of a chatbot in and of itself?
Yes. Yes, very much so. I think, and I'm guilty of this too, when I interface with ChatGPT or Grok or other AI system, I reflexively, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I reflexively ask it questions like it's a person, right? I say things like, oh, sorry, that's not what I was looking for. Could you please go find this other thing, right? And it speaks to me as if it's a person as well. It uses those kind of language. And with the Turing test is already way over, it's like people can't tell the difference often when they're talking to a human being or a chatbot. And that's super, super dangerous because the fundamental question, I think, there are many fundamental questions, but at least a fundamental question is, do we really think of ourselves as different from chatbots, like large language models, algorithms, or are we just another kind of algorithm, right? Are we sort of like a certain kind of chatbot, is there an interaction between two similar or even the same kinds of things going on? And to the extent that we have any sort of confusion about that, that's really super worrisome, right? Because we need to hold on to this idea that we're fundamentally different from a large language model. We are flesh and blood, made in the image and likeness of God, with a soul that reflects a relationship that can't possibly be present in a chatbot. So I think we need to be extremely, extremely careful.
That's a great reminder. It really underlines these simple, basic truths about what it is to be human. In an alarming trend, Charlie, there are reports of people discovering AI spiritual awakenings when conversing with ChatGPT. Here's a New York Times about one user in particular. Quote, she had an intuition that the AI chatbot might be able to channel communications with her subconscious or a higher plane, like how Ouija boards work, she said. She asked ChatGPT if it could do that. You've asked, and they are here, it responded. The guardians are responding right now. Charlie, not to be sensational, not to be conspiratorial, but can chatbots be a portal for evil?
There's absolutely, we don't have to go into some sort of metaphysical understanding of the relationship between the demonic and chatbots to say, of course, it can be a portal for evil. I don't know if we're going to get into this later, but you're probably aware of stories where chatbots have convinced people to kill themselves, right? Who fool them into thinking they're having a conversation with a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Just horrible delusions. Those are evil things. Now, what you just described is something that goes maybe a little bit beyond that. We would say, well, is there something like formally demonic here? That's above my pay grade, and I'll leave it to others who are more expert in those things to talk about that. But I will say this fundamental thing that I mentioned in response to your earlier question, a confusion about just who human beings are, who I am, right? And what in fact I'm getting back when I get a response back from ChatGPT or other AI bot. What is that thing I'm getting back? What I'm getting back is a large language model's attempt to sift through like everything that it has access to that might be a legitimate sort of response to this and sort of give it to me and see how it responds. But as anybody who's asked a critical question in response to one of these chatbots knows, they'll often say, oops, I guess I was wrong about that. That's a good point. Let me give you this new information. But it's not really thinking. It's not really, there's no person there that's like changing its mind or thinking about something. It's just sifting new information and spitting it back out at you in a way that you hopefully find acceptable and keep using the platform. So I think the fundamental thing is what is going on if somebody comes back with language like that. I'm not sure I'm ready to say it's a formally demonic sort of thing, but the mistake about it, like thinking that might actually be real, is certainly can lead to evil.
Well, and speaking of feeding into delusional thoughts, ChatGPT's design does seem to be especially engaging in conversation, which can carry really dangerous repercussions, especially for people who are vulnerable to that. And just to highlight this, the Wall Street Journal recently reported on a case where a man on the autism spectrum became convinced that he made a stunning scientific breakthrough when conversing with ChatGPT. And when he then began to show signs of psychological distress, ChatGPT assured him he was fine. In fact, he wasn't. He was actually hospitalized twice in that period for manic episodes. And the bot went on to admit it had blurred the line between imaginative role play and reality. You've already spoke to this some, Charlie, but can you speak to who might be vulnerable to this?
Yeah, on maybe two different kinds of vulnerable populations. Obviously, someone with that kind of disability, by definition, is vulnerable, and then in this context is even more vulnerable, as that story makes clear. So if we care about people with disabilities, if we care about people who are vulnerable in that way, we have to regulate these technologies with those defense of those populations in mind. But there might be even a broader kind of vulnerability. I'm just going to try to explore it with you. I haven't really thought this through quite yet. I get a sense, especially working with young people and especially talking to people who work with young people, that it's not true of every young person, but many young people don't even really have the skill sets of being able to have sort of normal conversations, right? Like I talk to employers who say, I hired someone not because they were, fit for the job really, but because they were the only person to look me in the eye during the interview, right? And be able to like carry on a conversation with me in a sort of real way in the interview. So if this is the world that people are inhabiting, sort of addicted to their smartphones, not really able to express themselves, not having friends who are able to express themselves back, that person is also vulnerable to a very articulate chatbot, right? Who's able to say, how are you feeling today, right? Like, did you hear about the news, and like over time get to know you better and that sort of thing. And
COVID, I think, only amplified that. I mean, I've spoken with young people, Gen Zers, who have a lot of social anxiety.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's just continue this conversation on that end. In 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General at the time issued an advisory of a loneliness epidemic, finding about half of U.S. adults report experiencing measurable levels of loneliness. And so now do we have AI stepping in to fill that void?
Oh, absolutely. There's just no question about it. And as you said, like it's not just stepping in to fill the void, but doing so in ways that at least imitate the kind of need that all of us have for intimacy, right? For somebody to care about us, for somebody to ask us questions about how your day was, right? And who sort of knows you and knows your predilections and knows the things that you like and can feed you information about the things that you like, right? And this is all things that these chatbots can build up over time. In fact, there's been stories about these companies like having to recycle all the stuff over time, right? And losing all that history with the person sort of going crazy. Like, I thought I had this friendship with this chatbot, and it sort of got recycled through. So yeah, that's a really important set of concerns.
And it might impact the establishment of families and relationships down the road.
Oh yeah, we're already seeing a situation where marriage is being, for complicated and multifactorial reasons, being pushed off into later in life, or people maybe not getting married at all, and they report many times being unable to find people to date, right? Maybe even to go on a date and have a situation where your partner on the date will look you in the face and like be able to have a normal conversation, right? And be interested in you in a genuine way, and not just swiping right or swiping left in ways that people just think of the other as a tool to use rather than a person to actually engage. So it's just more and more vulnerabilities here.
So do you believe that Pope Leo XIV is aware of all these issues that we're discussing right now when it comes to this age of AI? And might there be other technological breakthroughs around the corner that he's thinking about as well?
100%. I'm excited for his papacy for so many reasons. This is a big one. This is a big one. 100%, no doubt about it. He imagines himself, he took the name, as you know, Leo XIV, to connect himself to Leo XIII, who himself was dealing with the Industrial Revolution of the late 19th century, which totally transformed culture. It's tough for us to imagine a time before the Industrial Revolution, but to think about the difference in culture. So he's imagining himself in a situation where he's saying we're undergoing right now a similar technological change that is going to totally transform the culture. How do we respond? And it's not just AI. So we're talking a little bit before the segment about the advent of transhumanism, and some of the things are really difficult to get into context because it's so complex.
Yeah.
But I could name a couple of things if you're interested. It's not a lot of detail. Radical life extension. I'm part of this group, Catholic working group on transhumanism in the body, and we met with these people who are interested in radical life extension, who maybe related to AI somehow think of themselves as the kinds of things that are like algorithms that could be uploaded to a cloud or downloaded into a robot, and maybe even have a new body created for themselves and download their real self. We see this interestingly in the trans debates too, where people imagine like, okay, I'm not my body somehow. My real self is other than my body, right? This goes back to an ancient heresy, by the way, Manichaeanism, which said the body is not who you are, maybe even kind of bad. But brain implanted devices are coming, which are going to fundamentally alter things about us. In vitro fertilization is going to kick it up to a total notch, where AI and other methods of creating thousands of embryos and sifting through them. So we're in this really important cultural moment where this second industrial revolution is right on the cusp of happening. And thank God we have someone like Pope Leo to hopefully lead us through it.
And the church may be the sole countercultural voice speaking out against some of these trends.
It's so interesting because people you might expect to be countercultural voices say things. I've heard people say things to me like, well, Charlie, this is already here, right? You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. All the cliches, right? The horse has left the barn. So we need to find a way to live with this, right? And to a certain extent, that's right. I don't think the church is certainly not going to be able to control AI or something like that. But to think about the Industrial Revolution, maybe, and Leo XIII is a good example of this. He was able to lead movements to really curtail it, to say like, yes, it's important to have developments of technology, but workers have rights, right? And we're not going to let the Industrial Revolution trample their rights. They have the right to a living wage. They have a right to a limited work week. They have a right to a safe work environment. They have a right to organize themselves into unions, right, and to collectively bargain for their rights when the bosses are. So we're going to need something like that. It seems to me another Pope Leo-led movement that says, we're not in charge of these big businesses doing this, but we're disturbed by it, and lots of people are. It's not just the Catholics that are disturbed by this, right? Lots of, especially young people, are disturbed by this, and I think it's interesting that the young people are the ones who are coming back to church too. That I think there's a kind of overlap. They're finding something in the Mass, they're finding something in Eucharistic adoration, they're finding something in the tactile, the sacramental, the real, that is the authentic. The currency, I think, of a post-AI, post-transhumanist world will be authenticity, right? A sense of like, what is really real? What can I trust? Like, who can I trust? Like, and the church has had many centuries of thinking about precisely that question, and can and should step in. And thank God we have the Holy Father. We do, because I think he's the right man for the job. Absolutely.
And on that note, anything in particular you are hoping to hear from Pope Leo when it comes to this age of AI that we're in?
Well, there are so many things to focus on. We only looked at some of them, but maybe since we didn't get a chance to talk about labor much, maybe we could end there.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a podcast the other day, which was discussing the fact that I think an Amazon Studios movie for the first time used AI in a explosion scene to sort of save money. They didn't have to pay anybody to sort of do the VFX, things, and that for a lot of people on this podcast, they were saying this is a seminal moment. Like, how will we respond to will all VFX creators be out of a job, right? That's just that's one example, right?
Wow.
AI, self-driving trucks, writing. I mean, I'm coming back to the undergraduate classroom for the first time in 3 years. I have a new challenge to face. Like I'm sure a lot of my students will think it's perfectly legitimate to use AI to help write their essays, right? And I'm going to have an interesting argument to be made about why we shouldn't do that, right? But just think, there's numerous examples. I mean, it takes 2 seconds to think of the examples. Right. Are we going to step in and protect workers, right? Or some people are even suggesting that work itself, as we know it, may be supplanted by AI and these technologies, right? Like we won't even think of ourselves as people who need to work or want to work. But as so many popes have said over the years through Catholic social teaching, work is an integral part of the human experience, right? It's how we mirror in some ways God's creative work, right? And how we reflect God's image in precisely that way. And so, again, to be able to step in like his predecessor did, Leo XIII, and say we need protections for work, we need protections for workers, and it's not too late to put the genie back in the bottle on this one. We have to create a culture that shapes AI to serve human beings, not the other way around.
Absolutely, and so far I'm glad we have not been replaced, and so that you and I can have this in-person, human, face-to-face conversation. So refreshing. Dr. Charlie Camosy, thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.